And we're live! Hello all, and welcome back to the Sigil stream. My name, as always, is Mr. Harlan Guthrie, and I'm here once again with the lovely and talented Ms. Joe Fallick. How
That's
you doing?
me.
That's
Good
you.
afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon! For most of the people. I mean, the East Coasters. There's a lot of people who watch this from the UK that might be getting ready for dinner.
That's right. 6 p.m. over there.
6 p.m. Perfect time for shepherd's pie and
Gravy.
Yorkshire puddings.
You're welcome for the dinner recommendations.
Yeah. Of course, Sigil Spotlight is a show where we have on guests. Sometimes we do tips and tricks about running RPGs, but it's all centered around the connection with Sigil, the, obviously, entertainment group. They've been a huge part of both Joe and I in the past few months, I should say, if not longer. We are part of a Tuesday night gaming stream that you can find right here on this channel at 7:30 Eastern. We are currently playing a game called Hereafter, the First Fire, using Gwen Marshall's published module through Sigil, as well as a little sneaky future pathway that might be coming up sooner than later. And of course, you might be watching this because you've backed S5E on Kickstarter, one of the many Kickstarters that will be coming your way from the Sigil team. Very excited. In terms of news... Rifts.
Find the tab.
Rifts is on Foundry. FTVV is another thing. So if you are a big fan, go check that out right now. And that conversation actually is a good segue into today's guest. Not because they specifically work with Foundry, but VTTs in general, which I'll be bringing them on in a second. But before we get to that, please make sure if you are enjoying Sigil's content or you want to hang out with a bunch of cool people that you join the Discord. You can find the link on the website, or you can just search Sigil Discord. I think the Facebook group also has a direct connection, a direct link to what's going on.
When did Discord become like the primary social place for nerds to gather?
Right.
The past couple of years, for sure. We've been on Discord for about 6 years now.
No. Is it? That long?
5 years?
I mean, the pandemic made 2 years feel like a month, so I totally buy that it's been that long.
Anyway, find the Discord and come join us, come hang out, and say hello.
Come join us. Come hang out. It's going to be a good time. We're here for a good time, not a long time.
It's Friday afternoon.
But yeah.
We don't want to be here for hours and hours.
You don't? Why not? It's Friday afternoon. This is where the party starts.
I have a fake garden to farm.
Oh, in a video game.
Yes.
Yeah, don't we all? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the floor, through a mental round of applause, Mr. Scott Casey! Woo! Normally I have sound effects queued up, but for some reason, my browser is not recognizing StreamYard in Chrome. It's only doing it in Firefox. So Firefox, and this is dumb. Ready for a rant? I don't understand why, but for some reason,
welcome,
in StreamYard,
Scott. Here's Harlan ranting.
Yeah,
Here you go.
this is a heck of a welcome.
But in StreamYard, when it's in Chrome, it has two output options for your audio, your mic and your audio. Mm-hmm. And then when you, for some reason, when you use it on Firefox, you only have the mic. You don't get to change the output. But anyway, that aside, Scott, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here.
Envision applause. So, Scott, for those who don't know who you are and what you do, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why, they might recognize some of the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Scott Casey. I am a Roll20 character sheet and API script author, Roll20 forum champion, and just generally lurk on the Roll20 forums doing things. And I've been working with Sigil for the last... Yeah, you weren't kidding that the pandemic made time fly. 8 months, I think,
Wow.
directly on various sheet projects. We actually just released the Scion 2E official sheet for Onyx Path.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That went live this week. Excited to see what folks think of that. And then I've also been helping out on the Savage Worlds adventure sheet. Doing some of the back end stuff on that. So yeah, that's me.
I guess the big question is, how did you get into that? I mean, that's sort of, it's interesting because you look at sort of programming language and things like that, and then the offshoot of role-playing games, and then the offshoot of people finding VTTs and connecting with them. How did that path happen for you?
It's very neat.
I had a very odd path to it. I was actually in graduate school for biomedical sciences when I started programming on Roll20,
Interesting.
and was using Roll20 to play, RPGs with friends from college that we had then all scattered across the world at that point, and wanted to do some API scripts to supercharge my games to make things more fun for folks. Because GMing my first ever role-playing game, that was also my first role-playing game, wasn't enough to do all at once. Decided to throw in some API scripts, and was lucky enough to have the Aaron on Roll20 forums. If anyone is frequents there, you will recognize that name. Mentor me and kind of teach me the ropes, and so started with API scripts, and then Paizo's Starfinder came out 3 years ago, 4 years ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while. Jeez.
And I wanted to make sure that there was a really good sheet for that, and so I decided to go from designing little tiny scripts to designing a big, massive, powerful sheet. And Roll20 liked it so much that they contracted me to finish it as an official sheet, and that's how I got started doing this as an actual gig.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned that early on you started creating APIs as you were GMing to make it sort of, I guess, more fluid and more fun. What were some of the stuff that you started out wanting and building?
So my first script was a script called Share Vision, which please no one go look at that code. It's atrocious. But it was I had this situation coming up in the game where this party was going to be split, and I needed them to be able to see things that their characters couldn't actually see via the dynamic lighting, but I didn't want to reveal the whole map. And so I made the script where it shared vision of tokens and characters and whatnot, so that people could see, piece of the battle that were going on when it wasn't their turn, so they weren't just sitting there staring at a black screen.
Very true. Yeah.
So that was my first dipping my toe into it. A lot of cookie cutter copy paste code in that sucker. More recently, one of my more popular scripts is Door Knocker for Roll20, which gives sort of more intuitive controls of opening a door using the dynamic lighting lines, instead of having to go to the dynamic lighting layer, move a door line, and then go back there and move it back when the door closes. You can just use Door Knocker and do it all from one layer, and it adds windows to Roll20 maps as well that block token movement, but you can see through them. It does a whole bunch of stuff.
Very cool.
Wow. That's fantastic. So obviously there was a problem that had come up sort of in your game, and your first API was sort of a solution to that problem.
Yeah, and it wasn't even going to release it or make it public really, because it kind of worked for me, but I was.
Have you always been the kind of person who's been like, okay, here's a problem, instead of just like complaining about it and maybe making a half-hearted effort to find a better solution? You're the person who's like, all right, I'm going to sink, I guess, like 30 hours or however long it took you into writing this code, and then now I have the answer and I made it, and I can market it or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know about the marketing side of that, but definitely I enjoy solving the problem, even if it's not necessarily my responsibility.
Yeah, that's fair.
Did your biomedical science degree then fall by the wayside, or are you still like dabbling in?
So I got my degree and then was working as a lab manager in a research lab, and then decided that what I actually wanted to do was work in the RPG space and doing virtual tabletop stuff full time. So now I freelance full time.
Good for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, between the two, getting to do something you love, it's always sort of way out if you can make it.
Yeah, I mean I enjoyed them both, but doing this I don't have to work with mice. So
fair enough. Just a different type of mice, the ones that are connected to our computers.
Oh, good one, Harlan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well done.
I'll be here all week.
Well done.
Although recently I did have an argument with somebody, not to be named, about what the plural of a computer mouse is. If it's mice or mouses. And
who won that argument? Can I just...
No one won
for
the
posterity?
argument. No.
Am I getting the sense that both parties of the argument are in fact on the stream right now?
Google said
Quite
that
possible.
mouses is correct, just not normally used.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
No, it was a fun argument. More of a heated conversation that ended in fist fights. No, I'm just kidding.
You won that one too.
Won that one too. Yeah, you've taken boxing. So Starfinder, you mentioned that was sort of your first break into actually writing the character sheets and things like that.
Yeah.
So most people, well, actually, I would say most people now are also familiar with the virtual tabletop character sheets, just because COVID has made it so much more likely that people are going to try to play online than at all.
Yep.
But what are the main differences? You don't just take a sheet and put it on the virtual tabletop.
So it sort of depends on the client I'm working with. At your most basic, it's paper sheets have a lot of space devoted to areas where something is like weapons or armor or equipment, where the person making the sheet is like, well, they might have one thing or they might have like 60 of these things, and I'm going to make a space for 20 of them. In the digital sheet, we can actually make a space that grows for that as needed, which is kind of the first big change. The other big change is that the way you interact with it is a little different. It's a mouse, or if you're using a tablet, you might be tapping it instead of writing it with pen and paper. You've got to think of how folks are going to be able to look at it if they need assistive technologies like screen readers or zooming or whatnot, because it's not like a paper sheet where you can just pick it up or get a braille version of it. So that all has to be coded into it in order for it to be as accessible to everyone as possible.
Interesting. That's right. I didn't even think about that. The accessibility aspect is huge as well.
Yeah, learning accessibility is something I am continually trying. I think every sheet I've done has gotten better at the accessibility, although I think they all still have room to improve. It's one of those things you don't really have a real good idea of how good you've done.
Yeah.
If you aren't the one needing it.
No, that's totally fair. I mean, it is, though. At the end of the day, that's why perspective is so important, right? That's why people have those types of things where it's like, okay, is this good enough? So then, how important is it? And I would guess vary, but how important is it to understand the system sort of forward and backward before trying to convert it to a version of being on Roll20?
Yeah, it is. I think that's sort of the prime thing with designing a sheet that's going to work.
Yeah.
There's various things you can do on a sheet, but not all of them are going to be useful or even good to do for a system based on how that system actually plays.
Yeah.
There might be like, a system where it's like, okay, you can add all these modifiers to things, but if they're all conditional, you don't want to bombard the user with a bunch of queries that say, hey, do you want to add this and this and this and this? Whereas if it's like, okay, this thing is always applied, okay, then we can work on automating that. So thinking about that is one of the big pieces. Also thinking about how the dice results are going to be, because most of what we do is dice based. How the dice results are actually going to be displayed in chat can be a really actually surprisingly complex issue based on how the system works and what information someone actually needs.
It's interesting now that I'm wrapping my head around it, or trying to, because having that in-depth knowledge of how the character sheet is constructed. Additionally, how it is utilized is one separate aspect, but without having a full understanding of how people use Roll20 and how they want their sheets, and there is a bit of an art form there in like, okay, does inventory go on the second tab? How often do people look at their ammo or something like that? And
not just that, the utility of the sheet is going to change based on a character's like race, class, choices, right? Like you're not, as an artificer, you're not going to be using the same kinds of functionality for the sheet as just like a standard fighter, right?
Yeah, or whatever Starfinder does. I don't know the classes in Starfinder.
Starfinder is, let's see if I can remember them. They've added some too. So you've got Envoy, Soldier, Mystic, Technomancer,
Ooh.
Operative, and now there's a Biohacker, a Witch Warper, and a Monk type class that I can't remember the name of.
A Witch Warper. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
So do
Always
you
wanted
then
to play one.
primarily still play Starfinder, or what's your sort of game of choice?
So right now I'm playing, actually, I just finished a 4-year-long Pathfinder campaign.
Wow.
That
Published
ended with
or homebrew?
homebrew campaign.
Cool.
It at the end of it, the final fight was brought in our characters from our previous Pathfinder campaign, which was Giant Slayer, and we had this giant battle where we all controlled 2 characters, and we're fighting an Eldritch Horror to wrap up the story from both campaigns.
That's awesome.
But then I'm currently GMing 2 5e campaigns and playing a monthly Game of the Strange with some friends from college. So.
Oh, the Strange, yeah, Monty Cook, the Cipher system one, right?
Yeah.
That's a great system as well.
Yeah, it's a great sort of rules light, describe what's going on more than worry about whether I've got a +1 or a +2.
Yeah, very sort of. And again, going back to what we were saying, really understanding how different systems can be in that capacity, because trying to make a sheet for, say, the Strange, if that was ever something that, fully getting that is probably one of the trickiest things that a lot of people don't understand, that you are doing what essentially is research. You're like, no, like I need to know this system backwards and forwards before even trying to write a script, because if I'm not understanding the rules, has that benefited you at all? Like, does that make you an easier GM when it comes to the rules of like a system that you've sort of worked with on Roll20?
Yeah. I like when I was running a Starfinder campaign for a while, and for that it was like by the time I got to GMing the campaign, I had built the sheet and then rebuilt it for Roll20. I was like, okay, I got these rules down. I don't need the GM screen. I know what cover is. I know how the spell system works. I'm good.
That's kind of nice though.
Do you get like messed up between like the like Pathfinder rules and D&D 5e rules? There's a lot of overlap, but there's some places where do you get mixed up, or do you kind of have it all figured out?
All the time when I'm GMing my 5e games, I will say, give me a reflex save, and everyone's like, because in one of my games, it's a bunch of people who have not played anything but 5e, and they just look at me like, what? Like dexterity save. Give me a dexterity save.
That's fantastic though.
And optional rules like flanking and stuff. Like that's a Pathfinder thing.
Unless you just cross it over and you're like, you know what? In my 5e game, we're also gonna do flanking.
Scott's 5e.
And we're gonna do this.
Yeah. It's always a little interesting switching between them. So, but the 2 5e games I'm running are homebrew, so I don't worry so much about having the monsters be the right stats or whatnot. It's more making it fit in the world, and
That's totally fair.
So you said that you're a forum champion. I'm curious what kind of what designation what does that mean?
This is I don't know that there's actually a official definition of forum champion, but it's a lot of forum champions are the former community mods before Roll20 decided to go to a paid moderation service. And I'd say that's the majority of the forum champions. There's a few that are people that do content creation about Roll20, such as Nick Olivo, who does a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to use Roll20. He's a really, if you ever have questions about how to use Roll20, he does excellent videos on them. He does videos on how to use specific API scripts to really supercharge your game. He did a great deep dive into my door knocker script that show people how it could be used. So he's really great at doing stuff like that. So there's folks like that have the title, and then there's folks like me who were either contractors or have just been really active in the sort of content creation side of Roll20, not the like marketplace, but making sheets, making API scripts, helping out on the forums with, here's how you do this thing, that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a wide range of folks.
So
cool.
all of this started obviously because of your love of RPGs and stuff like that. Where did that all start? Were you sort of like or did you start as a kid, or?
I was always interested in RPGs. I played, like old classic computer RPGs like Neverwinter Nights and whatnot.
Nice.
But growing up, most of my friends were scattered all over. So it wasn't like I could just walk down the street to a friend's house and we could have a D&D game. Especially my friends that also would have been interested in playing D&D, that was especially true of. So I didn't play any as a kid. And then when I went to college, I found others that were interested, and we did a few kind of one-shots and whatnot. And then once we all graduated, we were looking for a way to stay in contact, and that's how I got started actually playing sort of more full-time and regularly. So
nice. And was that just D&D or?
So that was Pathfinder.
That was that must have been the campaign that you had for like the start, the previous campaign, not the 4-year one.
That was a while. So I've been on Roll20 for 10 years now, I want to say.
Wow.
So this was back when I was just had first joined Roll20, and we played for 2 years, I think, in that campaign, and then I did some in person and some more digital, and
Those were like the halcyon days where, before you had a job, I mean, you had like commitments at school, but you could just kind of hang out and play D&D.
Yeah.
Did you guys all live together in residence, like in a dorm together? And just kind of go up to someone's room and play D&D for 4 hours?
I went to a pretty small liberal arts school. There were, I think, 1,200 students was the total student body.
So you found every D&D nerd in the school.
I lived off campus, but it was like a block to anybody's dorm or whatnot. So,
Too funny.
Nice.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're running 2 D&D campaigns right now. Are they both homebrew, or are you doing
They're both homebrew. They're both set in the same homebrew world.
Oh, that makes it a little easier. So
so any world building I do, it's the same. Like,
is it set in the same time? Do the groups ever like influence each other's games, or like is there a chance where they can bump into each other?
No, I have set the second one 30 years after the first one. So
it's only very difficult to keep everything straight.
Yeah, it's, I don't have to think about, okay, this party went to this city and did this thing, and now this other party's here and they've got to deal with it's any crossover of like what they have to deal with is, okay, 30 years ago this thing happened. You aren't going to go like fix it or find these people. You just, this is the way it is now.
This is just how it happened. How often do you run them? Is it like every 2 weeks or something, or do you alternate? Or
one of them is weekly, and which is the one I run on Roll20, and then another one is every other week, which I run in person.
In person?
Yeah.
Oh, so which do you have a preference, or are you sort of like see the value in both in person? Roll20?
I think that they are good in different ways and challenging in different ways. Doing virtual is, I think, great for, you've got these great maps and tokens, and everyone can have a token that really represents their character. You don't have to spend quite so much time going, okay, well, I do a d20 and then plus this and plus that, and then I've got sharpshooter, and it's all laid out in the chat of, hey, here's what your total is, great, and so the action can keep going a little bit quicker. But at the same time, trying to keep that interpersonal interaction going is a lot more stressful, and takes a lot more energy to keep going. And then sort of playing in person is the opposite. The interpersonal stuff is much easier because you're there and you can see everyone's body language, and there's no lag or someone losing a mic, so you know what's going on.
And also tell them to get off their phone.
Yeah, and let's be honest, rolling math rocks is fun.
Oh, So when I use virtual tabletops, and we use it a lot, we use it on the Sigil stream, because I'm a big supporter of it. I love a lot of it. I still roll my dice physically. I'm such a
Same.
big.
Same.
Now, have you seen these die? Or I don't. You might even own some. You might have invested in them.
Yeah, the Bluetooth dice that will hook up to Roll20. They're like,
Yeah.
What?
I saw like Kickstarter. It's something
This
like $400 or
Yeah, they're
really
expensive. There's a few different like companies. I think they're all trying to race to the finish line. And but yeah, basically you roll them, and
no cheating.
And whatever the result is, it inputs it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those? Are you kind of like or are you like, oh, that's awesome?
I think it's cool. I think it's the ones I've seen have been way more than I'm going to spend on a set of dice.
Yeah.
Especially since I've got a dog around that, it's even money
Loves
that
to
a die
eat
is going to disappear.
I was going to say, I can
at some
tell
point.
you have a dog because you've got little like dog toys.
Yeah, you can see
the best.
Coda's dog toys all over
Yes.
my basement here.
Coda.
Yeah, I think those are great. In my 5e game that I run online, I've actually set up the 5e sheet where people get a query. So I've got some people that like to roll digitally and some people that like to roll physically. And for those that roll physically, I have a query set up on their sheets that they can, instead of having to roll the digital dice, they just click the button and it says, what did you roll on your physical dice? And so they can, put in their
Just punch
18
in
or
the
20
number.
or whatever.
Cool.
That's neat.
What a
And
great
so
way to
that
do
way I can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of friends, so it's people that I trust. I'm not worried about someone being like, yes, it's an important roll, I got a nat 20, or
It's
oh,
my
I didn't
fourth
care about that,
20
it's a
in a
nat 1,
row.
Just makes it tougher to cheat, but don't worry, we'll find a way.
We'll figure it out.
No, that's really interesting to think about how, and again, I say it a lot, but I really feel like COVID has influenced so much of the way that we're prioritizing gaming and things like that. Now we're sort of moving it back to the forefront. But how many people are sort of reluctant now to move away from VTTs because of how many options there are? And
It's so convenient, man.
well, I think more than anything, I don't think anyone would argue that VTTs have exponentially increased the amount people get to play. Because it's like, well, you want to come to my house and I got to build a set for tonight's Kraken fight and da-da, versus like, it's like, nah, it's all good. Like,
I'll go find an ocean wharf battle map that's out there somewhere, and here's a great token art, and I'll make it, or great Kraken art, and I'll make a token, and okay, we're set.
Yeah. Now here's a question for you, and this is we've had I think one or two VTT people on before, and I always sort of ask this question because I'm always interested in it. Have you seen programs like or itself Tailspire? Have you seen?
I have not used Tailspire, but I've seen it.
Okay. Because
I'm
it's
fascinated by the concept.
Yeah, well, that's it. So it's not really like it's not a VTT. I mean, it is. It is literally a virtual tabletop, but it has none of the accessibility that a Roll20 has. But it has the overwhelming art and all of that, like, thumbprint detail of like painting the miniatures in a really tactile, satisfying sense that you can't get in on the VTT. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of advantages, but to me, again, equally, everyone will sort of be there and say, well, no, like having a mini and like moving it and like, seeing the work, there's nothing that compares to that. But then they have things like Tailspire. So you haven't played it, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on
So
something like that.
I actually am not that interested in Tailspire for one reason, sort of the same reason I'm not interested in using like Tabletop Simulator to play my Pathfinder games.
Yeah.
It's that if you're using the pre-made assets, you can't customize what your players are encountering. So you're gonna have to be like, here's the tavern, but over here there's this, boar's head hanging off the wall that I didn't find a model for, stuff like that it's a lot easier to add to a JPEG that you're using as a map than it is to build a 3D model for and import it into
Tailspire. The way they do it in Tailspire, it actually is pretty easy to build a 3D model. Like it's all tile based, right? So you build your custom model and you can have meshing, like interact. You can change. I've seen people build like there are static assets. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
Like there may be 10 different models of orc. And you can't zoom in on the orc and like change their color. So you're 100% right there. But in terms of like
of making the walls for your building or whatnot.
Any size,
Really?
shape, you can make the. Oh yeah, it's like it's like a build engine. You know, you can literally.
I'm gonna have to look into this more then.
Harlan and I got really well, mostly Harlan. I was mostly just decorator of the building, but he was like, okay, so the base that we have in our 5e game, I'm gonna build it and I'm gonna make everyone a room, and then I'm like, he got in there and like measured it all out, like 5 foot square by 5 foot square.
And then what you can do obviously is after you build something, you can upload it and people can then download those assets. So what you can do is like someone goes in and they build, you know, a cool tavern. And then you're like, okay, I have this huge green map. I'm going to bring in a tavern. And to me, it looks so similar to the Dwarven Forge. Is that what it's called?
Right, yeah, to using the blocks to make it on the table. Okay, that's kind of cool.
Well, and that
really
to me
cool.
is it is because but it will never swap out like the VTT because it doesn't have any of the accessibility that needs, but it absolutely swaps out the feeling that I am so envious of when you walk through those like convention floors.
Oh, it's
and
so tactile.
Yeah, you see those gorgeous tactile, like, you know, oh, you're like, oh my god. But then it's so funny because it's
like Critical Role and you see them bring out the battle map and you're like, oh my god, I want to play on that. I really don't want to invest the money or the time to build that, but I want to play on it.
Well, it's actually funny because it's almost a double-edged sword because I look at that and I'm like, oh my god, I want that amazing, blah blah blah. But the truth is, if I invested money in that, I'd go, well, I can't really play anything other than this dungeon. Like I can kind of move it, but like it's always going to be a dungeon. So to me, Tailspire, there's an argument to be made that that's almost better because it gives you that customizable ability. As a player, you can zoom in and look at it and see all the cool details that you want. Yes, you can't touch it, but you can also just scrap it and then make a whole sand area, you know, make a beach front. Like it's crazy.
I don't know if Tailspire has this, but the other thing I've seen is someone was building an alternate reality D&D app.
So I think that's what we're
either hold your phone up or have, you know, Google Glasses or whatever, and it would put it on your table and would actually have, you know, spell effects of, you know, you cast burning hands and it has a burning cone that goes out from your character.
Yeah, Tailspire doesn't have that yet, but I've seen that, and that's crazy. Because to me,
that's like taking it, and I mean, you still can't touch it, but you see it, just standing up from your table.
I mean, to me, that's a pretty damn exciting. I mean, imagine for a second, you know, going over to your friend's house in 10 years, and everyone being like, "Hey, everyone ready?" And everyone just picks up their pair of glasses. You know, it's like that easy. Just be like, "Cool. Oh, they charge? Yeah, charge." And you have your physical mini, and then everything else just changes. I mean, that's only 50 years off from standing there. In the mini thing, in the dungeon, being like, okay, guys, you know, like VR and
being just full on Star Trek holodeck.
Exactly, and that's really, isn't that all what we want at the end of the day? Don't we really just want a holodeck to exist?
So on the other side of like the realm here of nerd gaming, but kind of like sharing the overlap Venn diagram of what we're talking about. Have you ever done any LARPing, like actual physical in-person?
I have not done any LARPing.
It's on our bucket list.
Kind of interested in it, but I'm not. It's one of those things where like, if I'm going to do it, I want to trust.
Bastion of nerddom, like. You have to cross over into LARPing. It's the final thing. You're like, yeah, okay, I play a lot of D&D and I write APIs and stuff, but I don't LARP.
Yeah, not yet. Well, but you want to trust that it's
But if I'm going to do it, I want to do it with people I trust, and not just with a bunch of random folks. And actually, I take that back. I did sort of do LARPing in college. Every year or a couple times a year, we would have a zombie Nerf war that would go for like a week on campus.
LARPing. That counts.
And so you would, you know, the one person would start out as the zombie, everyone else would start out as the humans, and with their Nerf guns to protect themselves. And then if you got touched, you became a zombie. And you know, just seeing how the horde spread through the campus was always interesting.
That's so awesome. Liberal arts colleges.
Yeah. She went to one as well, so she could say that. No, it's interesting though. LARPing to me, I would do it as well, but to me, I would want to do it like quality. I
Be
want them to take it
immersive.
seriously, you know?
Yep.
I don't want to see some guy on the back of his pickup truck eating beans in a,
Beans?
you know,
Why beans?
I don't know.
What do you have against beans?
I just don't want to. I don't want to
Go
be.
with McDonald's.
I want to be
you don't
immersed.
want to see them eating
is what
McDonald's.
I'm trying to say. I want to go and like, you know, I want to role play from start to finish. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that costs too much because there are places that do that, but it's like,
Yeah.
We'll do that.
we'll do that one time. We'll
Yep.
figure it out.
Well, you know what? Once it's safe for us all to join, we should just do a Sigil, person
Yes.
meet up at like Gen Con or something and just.
Oh,
Aaron, are you listening?
Aaron, if you're listening,
Sigil LARP.
Sigil LARP. Sigil LARP. Gen Con, I mean, I am so itching to go back to Gen Con.
Yeah.
We went in 2019, and then the world
exploded.
happened. But yeah, really eager to get back. We were debating about whether we want to go this year, but I think maybe one more year might feel better, but who knows?
Yeah. I went in 2018, and it was my first ever tabletop convention.
Yeah.
Did you have the best time?
And then couldn't go 2019, and then couldn't go in 2020, and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel ya. Well, definitely it is on our to-do next. Whether it's this or next, we are 100% going as well. So who knows? Maybe we'll meet you there in the Sigil
good.
LARP, which will
Yeah.
have to happen.
Yeah. Totally.
Perfect. Scott, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This was an absolute blast. It's always so interesting to learn that side of it because I think so many people see it and they're like, oh, you take a sheet, you put it into the game, easy. But there is so much more in terms of like understanding and like researching and figuring out what people want that people give it credit for. So I'm really glad that we got to talk about this and hopefully share a little bit of what you do so that people can appreciate that level of effort every time they open a character sheet.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great to meet you guys.
Yeah, it
and
was an
talk
absolute
with you.
blast. Perfect.
Hey, Coda, come here.
Oh, yes, I want to see the doggy.
Oh, and
Well,
look,
okay,
Aaron
he's
has...
apparently going to not
That's
come up in
okay.
my lap.
Oh, he's a husky. He doesn't want to
Oh!
do anything you want him to do.
Look at that.
Forget
Coda.
about it.
Yes, good job.
Hi.
Yep. So he's an
Aw.
Alaskan Kleekai. So he's a mini husky. He is full grown. He's only 19 pounds.
Oh my god,
Wow.
he's so cute. Hi.
He's tiny. How old is he?
Aw.
He is 2 as of. He's 2 as of today.
Happy
birthday!
Coda! Yay!
Yeah,
Make sure
thanks,
you
your
make a
birthday,
big-
bud.
Cheese meat kit. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
What a good boy.
boy.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us, Scott. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Coda. And again, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Sigil Spotlight. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you around the table. And this is where my clapping would happen, but there's no clapping, so I'm just going to wave silently.
Clap, clap, clap.
Woo!